There are fragrances that rise. There are fragrances that fall. And then there is Bleu de Chanel. Most people don't realize this, but Bleu de Chanel did something almost impossible in the fragrance world. It didn't just dominate its era, it survived it. While other fragrances became memes, punchlines, basic choices, Bleu de Chanel remained untouchable. While Dior Sauvage collapsed under the weight of its own success, BDC quietly sat on its throne, unbothered, imitated by everyone, yet surpassed by no one. Here's the question that's going to drive this entire video. What made Bleu de Chanel so architecturally perfect that even when the entire industry copied it, it remained the king? Because here's what most people miss. Bleu de Chanel didn't avoid becoming overplayed by staying rare. It avoided it by becoming the standard, the definition, the fragrance that every other blue bottle wishes it could be. So today we're going back to 2010, back to the year Chanel dropped a fragrance that would rewrite the entire men's luxury market. Back to the moment when Sophistication got a new scent. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why Bleu de Chanel isn't just a fragrance. It's a blueprint. Let's begin. The landscape before the king. Picture the fragrance world in 2009. The market was fractured. On one side, you had the heavy, bombastic scents of the early 2000s. Sweet, loud, aggressive fragrances that screamed for attention, but lacked refinement. On the other side, you had the tired aquatics and citrus colognes. Fresh, yes, but forgettable. Safe. The kind of scent you'd wear to a job interview and immediately forget about. There was no bridge, no fragrance that could be fresh and deep. Clean and sophisticated. Modern and timeless. Men were trapped in a binary. Smell like a teenager trying too hard or smell like a man who'd given up. And then, in 2010, Chanel, the house that built its empire on timeless elegance, did something it hadn't done in 20 years. They launched a new men's master brand, the first since Egoiste in 1990. They called it Bleu de Chanel, and the fragrance world would never recover. But here's the thing. This wasn't just a new scent. This was a declaration, the scent of revolution. Let's talk about what Bleu de Chanel smelled like, because this is where the genius begins. The opening, a sharp burst of pink pepper and mint, followed immediately by the citrus bite of grapefruit and lemon. It was fresh, but not aquatic, fresh, not soapy, not generic. It was bright, invigorating. The kind of freshness that wakes you up, not the kind that puts you to sleep. But then, and this is critical, the heart arrives. Ginger, nutmeg, jasmine, and then the signature, incense. Here's the first question. Why did incense change everything? Because incense is ancient, spiritual, mysterious. It's the scent of temples, of rituals, of something deeper than just smelling good. Bleu de Chanel took that ancient, masculine depth and fused it with modern, clean citrus. It was a paradox. Fresh but deep, youthful but mature, casual but refined. And then came the dry down. Cedarwood, sandalwood, labdanum, and a whisper of vetiver. Woody, warm, polished. The kind of bass that doesn't shout. It lingers. It wraps around you like a tailored suit. This was the first time a fresh fragrance felt expensive. Before BDC, fresh meant cheap. It meant shower gel. It meant the scent you wore when you didn't know any better. Bleu de Chanel proved that fresh could be luxurious. And that single innovation, that created an entire category. the blue fragrance era was born. Every brand that followed, Sauvage, Versace, Dylan Blue, Prada Luna Rosa, was trying to capture what Chanel had already perfected. But the scent alone wasn't enough to make it legendary. Because Bleu de Chanel wasn't just engineered, it was architected. Close your eyes. Picture the 2010 Bleu de Chanel campaign, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Gaspard Ulliel. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored suit, dark eyes that don't ask for permission. The ad opens with him walking through New York City at night, not rushing, not chasing, just moving with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. The voiceover. What are your limits? What are you made of? The tagline. Bleu de Chanel, the new fragrance. But what they were really selling wasn't a fragrance. They were selling self-possession. Here's the second question. Why did Chanel's prestige matter more than the scent itself? Because fragrance isn't just chemistry, it's identity. And Chanel doesn't sell products. They sell legacy. When you bought Bleu de Chanel, you weren't just buying a bottle. You were buying into a lineage. The same house that gave the world Chanel No. 5. The same house that defined feminine elegance for a century. Now they were defining masculine elegance, and they did it with surgical precision. The bottle, sleek, minimalist, matte black with magnetic cap. No unnecessary flourishes, no gimmicks, just presence. The campaign, not loud, not aggressive, not trying to convince you, just certain. Because that's what Chanel understood that other brands didn't. True luxury doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. And the strategy worked. By Christmas 2010, Bleu de Chanel was the top-selling men's fragrance at Bloomingdale's. By 2014, when the Eau de Parfum launched, deepening the woods, amplifying the incense, perfecting the balance, it wasn't just a hit. It was the blueprint. Every brand in the market studied it. Every man who cared about scent owned it. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because most fragrances that reach this level of success fall. They become overplayed, basic, the victim of their own ubiquity. So why didn't Bleu de Chanel? The paradox. Why the king never fell. Let me ask you something. What's the difference between a fragrance that becomes basic and a fragrance that becomes a classic? Third question. Why did Bleu de Chanel survive when Sauvage collapsed? The answer isn't about rarity, it's about architecture. See, Sauvage dominated through projection. It was loud, aggressive, the kind of scent that announced your presence from across the room. And that projection, that loudness, was its downfall. Because when everyone is shouting, no one stands out. But Bleu de Chanel, it didn't shout, it whispered. The sillage of BDC is refined, present but not overwhelming, long-lasting but not suffocating. It's the kind of scent that people notice when they lean in close, not from 10 feet away. It's intimate. And intimacy, real intimacy, can never be mass-produced. But there's a deeper reason BDC survived. And it has nothing to do with the scent itself. It has to do with perception. Bleu de Chanel positioned itself not as the compliment king or the beast mode fragrance. It positioned itself as sophistication. Here's the fourth question. Can sophistication ever become basic? The answer is no, because sophistication isn't about being loud or different. It's about being right. When you wore Sauvage in 2020, people thought, oh, another guy who walked into Sephora? When you wear Bleu de Chanel in 2025, people think, that man has taste. The formula didn't change, the context did. BDC didn't avoid imitation. Every brand copied its grapefruit incense wood structure. But the imitations only proved one thing. There's the blueprint, and then there's the original. So how good was Bleu de Chanel in its prime? Here's the truth, and you need to understand this. Bleu de Chanel wasn't just good. It was definitive, but not because it was perfect. Because it understood something that most fragrances and most people never learn. Timelessness isn't about avoiding trends. It's about becoming the standard by which all trends are measured. Let me break this down. Sauvage tried to be unforgettable by being loud. Bleu de Chanel became unforgettable by being essential. Sauvage conquered through force. Bleu de Chanel conquered through inevitability. In its prime, 2010 to 2014, BDC did three things that ensured its survival. First, it balanced freshness and depth in a way no one had before. It proved that a fragrance could be versatile without being boring, sophisticated without being old modern, without being trendy. Second, it leveraged Chanel's prestige to position itself not as a product, but as a lifestyle. Owning BDC wasn't about smelling good. It was about being the kind of man who doesn't need to prove anything. Third, it created a category and then owned it. Every blue fragrance that came after was playing catch-up. And the beautiful irony? The more they copied it, the more BDC looked like the original masterpiece. So why does Bleu de Chanel still matter in 2025? Because it's not a fragrance, it's a principle. Here's what you need to take away from the legacy of Bleu de Chanel. Lesson 1. Loudness fades, refinement endures. If you want to build something that lasts, don't optimize for attention, optimize for respect. Lesson 2. Prestige is architecture, not decoration. Chanel didn't just make a good fragrance. They built an identity around it. They used Martin Scorsese. They used minimalist design. They used certainty. That's why it worked. Lesson 3. If you create the standard, imitation becomes flattery, not competition. BDC wasn't threatened by copycats. It was validated by them because every imitation only proved there's the original, and then there's everything else. But here's the final, most important lesson. True timelessness doesn't come from avoiding the masses. It comes from being so architecturally sound that even when the masses arrive, the structure holds. Bleu de Chanel didn't survive by hiding. It survived by being undeniable. So the question isn't whether Bleu de Chanel was good in its prime. The question is, what are you building that's so fundamentally sound it could survive its own success? What system are you architecting in your style, your work, your presence that doesn't need to be exclusive to be excellent? Because that's the difference between being a trend and being a legacy. If this video made you rethink not just fragrance, but the entire architecture of timelessness, hit that like button. If you want more breakdowns where we dissect what makes certain things endure while others fade, subscribe and turn on notifications, and drop a comment. What's the one thing in your life, fragrance, style, habit, that you've built to last? I'll see you in the next one. Until then, architect your legacy with the Fragrance Affair.